and then we'll get rolling. So welcome everyone. This is part 2 of Coaching 101 with the venerable and esteemed Dominic Scafidi. A head shake. See what I can get from that. So anyway, we all know Dominic already. He's very giving and kind and caring and a damn good coach. So we're lucky to have him, and I appreciate his willingness to give so much of his time. Last time in 101, we covered what is coaching, what is the purpose of coaching, what is the structure of a coaching conversation, beginning, middle, and end, and spend some time in the beginning and the end. In part 2, we want to talk about, Dominic is going to talk about the middle of the conversation, what he refers to as an enlightenment section, if you will. Dominic, is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'll say more about
that.
Yeah.
So the middle of the conversations, what are the characteristics of coaching questions? What is the flow and direction of the coaching conversation? And what are some important coaching skills, listening, asking questions, rapport, etc.? We've got, useful concepts, building awareness and responsibility. So that's what's on the agenda for today. If anyone has any questions, we've got a small group. I will be managing it as people come in, hopefully, and still join us. I'll get them muted as they come in. But if you have any questions, into the comments they go, or stick your hand up in the air and wave it, and we'll see you. All right? Are there any questions about that from anyone? Before we get there, did someone have their hand up in the air already?
Neil's testing you to see.
Neil, what do you got there, Neil?
Just to see if it really works.
Did it work, Neil? I don't know how Dominic always manages to see shit before I do, man. So how he does it is magic. But anyway, okay. With that being said, I'm going to mute Neil, who I'm going to keep an eye on now. Or Neil's going to himself. Okay, I got you, Neil. And Dominic, the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay. Yeah, so welcome everybody, and thank you for your interest in this. This is something that I am, coaching and talking about coaching. I have a lot of interest in this. I do a lot of my own ongoing development in this, and I also train people. Well, more specifically, I train leaders and people managers in how to be great coaches rather than good bosses. So I play with these distinctions a lot. I immerse myself and explore them a lot. And even in my own coaching journey, as I'm in a pursuit of, if you could call it that, a pursuit of mastery. Are you really? Is that a pursuit of mastery? It's just a path of an interest and a calling toward mastery, which means that I'll always be on that. I'll always kind of continue to know like what's more and what's more and what's more when it comes to coaching and coaching effectiveness. So yes, as just to reiterate as what Michael said, I've got a bunch of things that I'll talk about, but for people on the call, I imagine many of you are already coaching, you're working with coaching clients, some of you are thinking about it, etc. So please, if anything prompts a question, please get that question out, because I can easily get my message and whatever I want to talk about more into the form of dealing practically with whatever you want to talk about. So don't worry about me. I'll get out what I intend, and it'll just be more practical for you. So I thought, and Michael, you did a job there in terms of just talking about the prior session. So we did Coaching 101. And in Coaching 101, we covered a few things. By the way, we'll post some of this. There's probably 2 videos worth posting. The Coaching 101 video is worth posting. And then another video, which was Ankush and I in his group. That video was about what is coaching versus teaching and preaching and some of the other things that people do. So that video is also good, right? So, and what I mean by that is in topic, what it's covering. These are important distinctions. If you're going to coach, it is important that you have an idea of what coaching is, or understand what the distinction of coaching is compared to anything else. But just in a quick, brief thing to bring the Coaching 101 up to date, and also in case anyone dives in here. So we say, what is coaching? And I threw out a couple of definitions, or not definitions, distinctions, which I've often used in the training that I do with leaders and managers. And so, you know, in there's two of them I use. I say Miles Downey, he's a guy who wrote, I can't remember, Coaching Effectiveness or something. And his definition, he says, is coaching is the art of facilitating the performance, learning, and development of another. So it gives you some sense of, as a coach, facilitating the performance, learning, and development of another. So there's a few pieces he's talking about in there. John Whitmore, who is actually, well, he's passed away not that long ago, but he was also Sir John Whitmore, real grandfather of coaching. And he wrote a book called Coaching for Performance. He says coaching is unlocking people's potential. Coaching is unlocking people's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. So it is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. That's interesting, right? Because in coaching, and both definitions, they do talk about learning. They do talk about seeing something more. But somehow coaching is doing something that helps them to learn rather than teaching them. So notice the distinction already, a distinction between what coaching is versus what teaching is. So just this knowing what it is, and I don't necessarily like or promote the idea of getting to a definition of coaching. I prefer, the thing that I tend to be enamored with is distinctions. What is the distinction about what coaching is? Because if you were to get to a definition, then it is dead. Definitions are dead. They are complete. They have a border around them, and it can never be anything more. So to get to a definition of coaching, to me, would be like wanting to get to the definition of love. Tell me what love is. I want to know what love is, because then I could do love as a definition. Whereas if we look at distinctions, I'm always in the inquiry of, what is love? What is love? So in a distinction, what happens is it's never ending. I never arrive at the definition. It is always a fluid, alive thing, which is constantly expanding and growing, and I'm learning more about it. So that to me is a kind of something I say is always want to be in the inquiry of what is coaching, and to continue to expand the idea of what that is. So we talked about definition. The other thing we said is the purpose of coaching. We said, why do you coach? Because if you are going to have coaching conversations, you really should know what the point of that is. So what is the purpose of coaching? Someone talks to you and says, I want coaching from you. Well, what is it that they are asking? What is it that they are asking when someone asks you for coaching? So that idea of the purpose of a coaching conversation is important. And what we said in Coaching 101 is the purpose of coaching. It has something to do with, I'll say it in different ways. When I'm in the corporate world and business context, it has something to do with performance. So the purpose of coaching has something to do with performance. I might use some of our 3 principles language in here. And what I'll say is that the purpose of coaching is it has to have some sort of an impact or a difference in the world of form for another person. Because they come to you to talk about what, here is where I am right now. I've got a boss and he's really this, and my job is really stressful, and this is where I am right now. And what they also say is, and here is where I want to be. Sometimes they don't say that. Sometimes they just complain about where they are. But in a coaching conversation, we must have 2 things present. So here is where I am, and where I want to be is somewhere else. Well, where I am and where I want to be is a distinction in the world of form. There is an expression of form here and an expression of form there, and that's where I want to be. The purpose of coaching is the movement from where I am to where I want to be. So that is really important for you to know. If you are having a coaching conversation with someone, those elements are there. This is what I assert you are promising them, is a conversation that is focused on where they are and where they want to be, and having a focus on that. Now, that kind of gets to effective coaching means that as a result of this conversation, people move along that, where they are to where they want to be. The way I say this in the training with leaders and managers is I say to them, if you are an effective coach, the way I know that you're an effective coach is if I see you today, and then I see you, 6 months from now, and you are more effective as a coach 6 months from now, I say, wow, you are really an effective coach. That the only way I know that that is true, again, I'm talking managers with employees. The only way I know that you were effective is because the results and performance of your people is at a higher level than it used to be. Otherwise, we're making shit up. We're saying, oh yes, you're a really deep listener and you really hold space for people and you create really great rapport with people. Yeah, you do all of that. You're really, really good at that. And you can be an ineffective coach. So an effective coach is because I see your client, I see your employees, if you're a manager who's coaching, and what I see is that where they are in terms of where they want to be is further along. That's the only thing that says whether you're an effective coach. So those things we talked about. And then from an understanding of this distinction of what is coaching, what is coaching? At the end of the day, all it looks like is a conversation. Right? So when it comes to this idea of performance and helping people move along, you could just talk to people and be helpful, right? They say, I want to be more influential, or I want to be happier in my life, or I want to be, have my relationship be better, or I want to be in a relationship. Well, there's many, many, many ways you could help them. You could give them a book, talk to them, share all that you know, and share your experience about it, and give them advice. There's a million things you could do. None of that is coaching. Right? So there's lots of stuff you could do, but it is important that you understand what coaching is, because otherwise you can't really do it in terms of in a conversation. So coaching is what? It is an intentional conversation. So it has a beginning, middle, and an end, and it is distinct from a kind of a casual chat with people talking about things that they're interested in. So it's distinct from a casual chat. And so what you're doing, what the elements are of an intentional conversation, it is purposeful. Intentional means it is going somewhere. There is an energy in a coaching conversation that is going somewhere. And so, again, as a principle of coaching, where is this thing going? Well, it goes in a direction. Well, what direction is it going in? It's an intentional conversation. In what direction? In the direction that the client wants. That is really a distinction of coaching. You cannot have a coaching conversation that is not moving in the direction that the client wants, because anything else, you are doing something else. I can teach you things on my agenda. Not interested in what you want. I can teach you on my agenda. You know, you will be more effective if your mind is more quiet. And I'm going to teach you this, and I'm going to teach you why it's important. My agenda. Because I can listen to what you're saying, and I can tell that you have lots of problems in your life and all that. I already know what the answer is, and I'm going to teach you that. Notice that energy is my agenda, and that's not coaching. So that is a teaching, it is a preaching, it has an assertive energy to it. Coaching, it's an intentional conversation that I will have this conversation in the direction of what you want. It is your energy moving somewhere in that direction. And I promise to support that energy in the direction you want. Not to dissuade you from it, not to convince you that what you want, you really don't realize is not actually what you want. I know you want more money, but that's not really what you want. You should, I know better than you. And so what you really want is something else. And I know you want more business, but that's not really what you want. So there's none of that. And you know, when we're in 3 principles, how could there be any of that? 3 principles says that who you are that I'm talking to is infinite potential, infinite intelligence. Who you are is the potential and possibility of the universe. And when I ask what you want, and you say that you want more money, why would I not honor what that wisdom tells you? What do I know about how life has caused you to come to some conclusion like that? Right? So as a coach, I promise to honor that. And there's a self-management as a coach, and to shut myself up in my own judgment and opinion and what I know that is so much smarter than you. That's the self-management as a coach. Because I will honor, hold you capable, see you as the infinite potential and infinite intelligence that is expressing through you, and not know better than you, but rather encourage more of that intelligence and what you know to come through you. This is what a coaching conversation would be. So we said that, and then we said there's a beginning, middle, and an end to it. And so the beginning, middle, and an end, if we take the 2 bookends, I can't have a coaching conversation if I don't know what you want. So somewhere early on in the conversation, you would hear something like, well, several things. You'd hear, well, what are we talking about? Because it's your coaching conversation. I'm not having the coaching conversation telling you what we're talking about. So what are we talking about? What's on your mind? What's important to you? That's what we're talking about. And then related in there is, and if we fast forward to the end of this conversation, what is it you want from this conversation? So we're talking about your business, you're talking about wanting to build your business. And so, yeah, I could get that. That's really important. And so what is it you hope to get from this conversation? Or how would you know this conversation is valuable? What would be different at the end of the conversation than the beginning? So notice how clear, or I'm starting to get clarity on the direction of the conversation. Because how can I coach if I don't know where you want to go, right? So in that conversation, beginning, middle, and end, the beginning is telling me where we want to go. The end, I'm jumping ahead, the end is what is also an important distinction in coaching. Remember, I said effective coaching has an impact in the world of form. So in the end, I use questions that ask things like, so what's different now? So we've been talking for an hour. What was the value of this conversation for you? What do you see now that is different? And notice these are questions. The reason they're questions is because the only person who can answer is the client, and what we're interested in is what's different for them. So what's different for you, and the other part that happens, so at the end, we're getting to what's the value, what's the impact, what's different. And again, it's in the world of form. So we've been talking about your relationship, and now I can hear you can see some things that are different. You know, you've had some insights and all of that, right? And so then there becomes this question of what will be different as you're now back into the next time you're connected with your partner, or the next time you go to work with your boss. What do you see is going to be different now? Who will notice? What will they notice? Notice these questions, right? Who will notice? What will they notice? These are only in the world of form. So someone will say, well, they'll notice that I'm a lot calmer. My boss will notice that I'm listening more and not interrupting as much. So notice how people are getting clearer and clearer in the world of form of what will be different for them then. That's the end of a conversation. And then how do you get them there is via the middle. And in the middle, we say, this is where we've said it's enlighten. And enlighten is lots is going on. You're just talking. And out of talking, we use the word enlighten. People see something that they didn't see before. And this is why, especially if you're a 3 principles coach, you're interested in, by the way, you can do enlighten in many ways. People who aren't 3P coaches or people who aren't transformative coaches, they sort of can get into the details, like in the world of form, about what the person is like. Well, tell me about your boss and why that's a conflict, or what challenges are you having in the business development? And they can get into that. And are you using Facebook ads? And are you right? Like they can get into that stuff. So some people would say, oh, that's enlighten, maybe. But when you're a transformative coach, or the way we do it, is we really look more to the source of the action, the source of what people are doing. And so in the middle, we are trying to turn more lights on. This is when you hear the word enlighten. It is like the person is stuck for some reason on this. I want my business to be bigger and it's not, and I can't get clients, and I'm not sure how to get clients, and right. So they're stuck in a way in that topic. And the reason you're stuck is because you can't see. So you're in a room when it comes to business development and all the lights are off. So you can't see. And so you go, well, I want more clients, but I really don't know what to do. And I've tried some things and it doesn't work. So it's dark. You can't see. So as your coach, I come in with you. And my job is to enlighten. All that means is, let's look in your room called business development. Let's look in your room about your business and your business expanding. Why don't we turn on some lights? See what we see. How do I turn on lights? Questions. Questions turn lights on. What's important about this topic? That's a question. And what's important about this to you turns a light on over in that corner. And I look with the client. The client looks. They go, well, what's important to this is, I want to make money and I really want to do this business and I want to da-da-da. And so they look over in that corner. And I listen. And then the next question turns on a light over in this corner. And the next question turns on a light in the middle of the room. And the next question turns on a light behind us. And what we're doing in the middle of the coaching, it's Halloween, they look great. Sorry, I saw Kirsten. So people turn on a light. We, as a coach in the enlightenment phase, we're using questions to enlighten. It's interesting. Notice, sometimes people think that enlighten is I will impart my wisdom on you. I will impart my, business development? Let me tell you what business development is. It's really about spiritual marketing. It's really about, let me tell you, you know what spiritual marketing is? I'll tell you, right? Like, it's like, so now I'm enlightening you. No, I'm not. It's your room. It's your room. It sits in your mind. It's full of thought. And the reason you're stuck is there's a lot of thought and it's dark. And we're not talking about what I know about the business development. That'll never help you. What we're talking about is let's just turn the lights on in your room so you can see some more. Because out of you seeing more, you are connected to infinite intelligence. You don't need to know the stuff I read in a book about business development. When you're connected to infinite intelligence, you're the pure potential and possibility of the universe. And we're here to waste your time in me sharing what I read in a book about how you build business and get clients. How would we even know that works for you? We are wasting time if that's what I'm doing. But when I, as a coach, can get quiet and connect with you and curious. So as a coach, there's a way of being that we have. So in the middle especially, but it's really throughout, but in the middle, so this way of being, which is curious. I'm curious. I wonder, right? And I'm curious about what you see, how you see it. So being curious, if you think about the middle of the conversation and how can I be useful to someone, my curiosity opens up questions which turn lights on in the room and they begin to enlighten. So curiosity, being curious, is a great thing as a coach. If I'm with someone, so now if we look at what is it I'm doing exactly in the middle of the conversation, by the way, this will expand out to all of it. There's a way of being, but just let's look at the middle. What I need to do in the middle is, one, be really present with the client. Being present with the client means what? I'm actually here. Where am I not? Not in my head. I'm not in my head figuring out the answer to their dilemma. Right? So I'm here, I'm present, I'm with them, and I am listening. So there in Mastery, I heard as I was going after my master certified coach credential, one of the things they talked about is spaciousness. You create spaciousness. And what is that? I'm, you know, in a way, right? Do I really need to create space? Because this is 3P is really cool for this, right? Do you really need to do anything to create space? You're in a conversation with someone. Do you need to do something to create space? Space is all there is. Space is already there. When you're not interfering, space is there when you don't interfere with the space that's there. Space is there for the client when you don't get in the way of it. So what do I need to do as a coach? Oh, so you said mastery is I create spaciousness. Well, sort of. It's already there when you're with the client. If you would just like, don't interfere, then there's going to be spaciousness. So you be present, there's space. You listen and allow expression, then there's space. You, as you're with a human being who's the infinite potential of the universe and they speak, boy, shouldn't you be curious? Aren't you curious? Like, aren't you curious about what they're saying, what that intelligence is seeing and seeing about in their life? And if you are curious, like, don't you think you would have a question? So do you like really do anything? Isn't this the most natural thing that would happen? There you are, you're curious. What arises within you is a question. And a question arises out of that space, which you can express and then shut up and allow the space for more expression. And so now you turn on a light and then another light and then another light. So this is the middle of the conversation. So much of this has happened, right? This is kind of what it looks like. Why don't I pause here for a bit? I'll have more to say, but I'm just going to pause and just sort of see where we're at and just take this anywhere. If you have a question, let's go where you want to go.
All right, everyone. This is a midpoint opportunity. What have you got so far?
Neil, go.
Nice.
Unmute him.
I got him.
Yeah.
Okay, Neil. You doing it? All right, he's got it.
Oh, you're still muted.
Volume, Neil? You're unmuted. Nope.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Maybe, maybe the microphone or something's off.
Yeah, because he's unmuted.
You might have a separate microphone that's muted.
Anyone else? I mean, I threw a question up there, which is how do you interfere with space? But I think that's oh, Neil, are you speaking with us?
Not yet. We'll come back. It's
Okay.
still muted. Yeah. Go ahead, Michael. What was your question?
I threw it out there more. I mean, I think I have a fairly good idea of how we interfere with space, but if you could maybe say a few words on that, like
occupy it.
Right?
Occupy it.
Right. I like that.
Yeah. So easy. Just go ahead, occupy it. Tell them what you know. Share with them what you see. Give them your insights. Tell them what you know applies. That's how you occupy space. Now it's about you, right? So now here we are in a coaching conversation, and for an observer, if anyone was observing, we'd be learning so much about the coach.
Right.
We'd be learning all that they know, all of their expertise, right? So you occupy the space. That's how it works. If you're not occupying the space, you are giving space. You're giving space, and that space, people will come into that space. You know, it's amazing to me. I was just having a conversation with my daughter. We went out for a walk before this call, right? And she's 21 and, you know, early in her life about careers and all that stuff. We go out for a walk and she comes back and she says, you know I really, what did she say? Something like, I know I really bombard you with stuff, right? It's talking about this is happening, that's happening, whatever. But she's like, but you know, I can't really talk about this with, you know, my boyfriend, and I can't really talk about this with my friends because they always just tell me I'm not thinking right, or I shouldn't worry about that, or right? And I said to her as we walked in, I said to her, I said, yeah, basically, in the world, nobody's listening to you. There is nobody listening. And everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got an agenda. Right? So no one just gives you the space. And when you experience the value and the insight and the power that's available out of the space to hear yourself, to listen to what wants to be said by you, right? This is incredibly valuable. And so I joked to her, I said, I said, it's really great that in the world, nobody listens to anybody. Because I said, this basically will keep me in business the rest of my life. Because people will pay for that skill and ability of being able to allow them the room to be in touch with their own wisdom. And I'll often say, like, you know, CEOs and, you know, like some of this is very practical. Like if you take a CEO in a company, and the company's not doing well, and you might need to downsize or sell off a division of the business or something like that. You tell me, if you're that person, who would you talk to? How would you process your own thinking about that? Where are you at? What do you want to do? Do you think you should sell the division? Do you think you need to downsize? Like, do you think you should talk to your executive team? Should you talk to peers in the business? Who would you talk to? And who could you talk to that would not have an agenda? Oh no, don't shut down that division. What do you mean don't shut down that division? Are you saying that because you run that division? or is that right? Like who? And you know, and then the finance guy doesn't want you to, and this person that, right? Or you go home and talk to your partner or spouse and they're like, well, why are you worrying about all that? You should shut that down. That's caused you nothing but stress anyway. Like, well, there's another opinion. It's like, when could you just hear yourself think for a minute? Like, what do you actually think about all of this, right? So this is the power in terms of, and the skill required as a coach is to really allow people the space and to trust themselves. And so I think we had a couple of hands.
Yeah, Neil, did you, just to honor our our order, did you get your mic sorted, Neil? Let's find out. Oh,
no,
evidently not.
I don't know why.
Hey,
yeah,
Neil, type it out. Type it, and I'll
get rid of your head. I don't know if your headset. Anyway, you'll figure.
In the meantime,
I think I saw Arvin's hand and Kirsten's hand.
Yeah, we're going to Kurt. We're going to Kirsten next. Kirsten, you're up to bat.
Okay, cool. So actually, this was a question that came up earlier, and perhaps you have already somehow answered it. But the question was around I've heard a lot of coaches talk around, you need to find the goal behind the goal, and so very easily it can become a quest for something other than where the client wants to go. Like I can see that if I go into the conversation thinking, okay, using your example, someone wants to make more money, and me thinking, well, obviously there must be another goal for why he wants to earn more money, and so I'm going off path to where the client actually wants to go. Now, what I heard you say around the middle bit was that just by staying curious and open and present, if there were a goal behind the goal, it would come up. But if there wasn't, then I don't need to go on a hunt for it.
Right. Okay, so let's this is a really good question, and especially for someone who's really wanting to be a transformative coach, not like a consulting kind of coach, right? Oh, you want money? Let's go after it, right? Like, so now how do we do that? Talk about your business, right? Like that, right? Transformative coach, and so this is now gets to another thing about the middle. In the middle, many of you have seen in behavior and psychology, they'll use an iceberg example of human beings. If you've ever seen this, they say a human being is like an iceberg, and then at an iceberg has this piece of an iceberg that's visible, and then a lot of the iceberg is invisible, right? What is visible about human beings? It's pretty much everything in form. I know what they say, their behaviors, their actions. So there's like this visible piece. Words, deeds, action, like that. Underneath the iceberg is the source of that. So they speak like that. Why was he that way in the meeting? Why did he ask those questions in the meeting? They are sourced in things we cannot see. What is it we don't see? We don't see things like intention. What was his intention? We don't see that, but the intention was the source of behavior and words and actions. What else aren't we seeing? We aren't seeing the values. He's got a real importance around family and life balance and all these other things, but we don't see that. But what we notice in action is that the person won't work past 5 o'clock, or they're, leaving early, like whatever is going on. But we see the action, but we don't see what's the source, what's really informing the action. So how's that? When we're coaching, we can coach, so we can enlighten anywhere in the iceberg. And what I'm going to suggest is if you think about the iceberg, they'll say about 90% is underwater, 10% is above. So 10% you see, 90% you do not see. Typical kind of transactional coaching versus transformational coaching gets all interested, all curious, and I'm going to say all distracted about the top of the iceberg that you can see. I particularly have this challenge with leaders and managers, because they all want to know, when they're coaching their team, they want to know, so what are you going to do next? What's your next step on this? They get into the action part of it. And so when they look at the person or this conversation, their focus is on action and what's visible. In other words, their focus is completely on form. Their curiosity is on form. But let me ask you something. If you took the iceberg and you needed to move it somehow, if you grabbed the top of it, which was visible, and you attempted to get it to go to the right a little bit, what do you think would happen the minute you let go? It will go right back. So it will go right back. You have made zero difference. Because when you play in that manifested reality, which are the words and the actions, and you start getting curious about the words and the actions, and well, what's a different action? And what's another way you could do this? And you are not at the source of action. So you are enlightening, but you are enlightening 10% of this iceberg. It's really not going to make much difference at all, because it's hard to change. The source of this action is all coming from underneath. You're putting more light on it, so they might come up with a slightly better action, but it's really not transformative. So you want to make more money. When I ask a question that is, what's important about that? Is that question at the top of the iceberg, or is that question enlightening underneath the iceberg? Right. So what am I curious? So what's important about that? Well, because I want my family to be able to live a particular way, and I want to be able to spend more time with them, and I want to blah, 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 right? So you're now in a different place, the source of something, which, okay, so that's just a way of asking questions and wondering for yourself as a coach, what are you curious about? And, as you study 3 principles, or as you increase in your mastery as a coach, what you find is they talk about 3P grounding. 3P grounding, what the value of that is it takes your interest away from what every other coach in the world is interested in, which is the top of the iceberg. And 3P gets your grounding into, I'm not tricked by all of that. I know really what's sourcing all of that. So then my questions start getting different, right, in terms of where I want to turn lights on for people. Now, am I now steering the agenda? So this is where you really want to pay attention to the energy in the coaching conversation. Well, when you tell me what you want, what I'm curious about is what is important about that? What impact will that have on your life? Like those types of questions, that is on agenda, on topic, and it is enlightening and broadening what you see in this direction. Now, your energy will take us where it takes us. In other words, you say, well, what's important about that is this, and I want more abundance in life or something. Here's what I'm not going to do. We should talk about the nature of abundance. Now I'm taking over the conversation. Have you ever looked at the nature of abundance? Let's talk about the nature of abundance, right? It's like, relax. Again, you have a human being, infinite potential of the universe, and they want money, and it's related to something, a desire that's driving them. Just get curious about it. Now, they may say in this conversation, this is why when you pay attention to energy, and as a coach, it's the weirdest thing, but it is their energy which is the source and driver of this entire conversation. If it is their energy, not your energy, driving this conversation. So if you just stay with it, some client might say, wait a minute, I don't think this is about money at all. I think really what's going on here is I'm feeling really constrained by my business. What's really bugging me is I'm not happy with the parts that I'm doing. Now do you see, Kirsten, I don't know if that answers your question, but now do you see how it wasn't about the money and it wasn't about building the business? But thanks to your enlightening question and sort of staying curious, not pushing it anywhere, but they were attracted by, hang on a second. I don't think this actually is about money. I think my problem is the kind of things I'm working on. I actually don't want to do them. And what I'm starting to see is if I had more money, I wouldn't have to do this stuff. Well, now this is different. Now we're going in a totally different place. But you didn't steer it there. Their insight did. So you really, as a coach, it's the coolest thing in the world. I always say, I may have said this in Coaching 101, but coaching is easy and effortless. Coaching is effortless. And why it's effortless is because it is not using your energy to get anywhere. You are always, only ever on the client's agenda, and it is the client that is going somewhere. You're just with them. You're just seeing where they're going, and you don't have anywhere for this to go, right? So effortless. Anyway, enough on that one. Sorry.
Nicely done.
Because I see Neil's back, and he might be able to talk.
Well, Neil, can you? No, still not. Hold on. No, still not. So the question from Neil was, have you come across types of questions that have shut down the clients where they switch off and don't want to carry on?
It's hard for a question to do that if it's a proper question. So what's a proper question? In coaching, so first of all, it's a genuinely authentic, curious question. It's an authentically curious question. I wonder about that. So in the nature of a question that is genuinely curious, it is curious, it opens space, I wonder about that. And so we can both look, right? When a question, by the way, it's open. A genuinely curious question would be open. It would have an openness to it. So when I am curious about what's important about that, that is an open-ended question, and I don't have anything in mind because I'm not sure what would be important about that for you, right? So I'm literally, there's nothing over here other than to open this up to see what you see, right? So curious question, open question. Typically, here's a tip. Boy, you can tell this isn't a 3P seminar because I'm going to give you a tip. So the tips, if you can start your questions with what and how, you will almost be guaranteed for open, right? So what do you see about that? What do you notice? How might you approach that? How have you approached that in the past? These are automatically going to be open-ended questions that will lead to, they compel thinking. If you use a closed-ended question, and this is where the risk from what Neil said is, what, can you have a question that shuts someone down, right? Is like, shut someone down. You want to do that? Just add in any sort of judgment or meaning into your question, right? So you want to make more money, and just add in any kind of judgment or meaning, right? Which would be, well, why would you want that? If you use any sort of tone that has an opinion, judgment, or anything like that, that will for sure shut it down, and create a sense of having to self-justify, right? So it's closing down. Any sort of question like, is money really what's important? Notice that's not an open-ended question. I can't believe that you would actually be coaching just to make money. Is money really what's important? Not only do I have judgment, I already know the answer to this question. You better get it right when I ask you. And so it's closed-ended. It's yes or no, and I am leading. So if you really want to kind of close down this conversation, that kind of thing in the questions will begin to shut it down. And the other thing I'm going to say is any sort of assertion, any sort of telling you anything, will run the risk. It's not guaranteed to shut it down. But if I tell you things, it's an assertive energy which you may push against if you don't believe them or it doesn't sit right with you. So that type of thing will start to happen. So Neil, you said...
That's brilliant.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yes. Neil is saying open-ended questions, like when I was an investigating police officer, open probing questions. Do you know what? Yeah, that whole Columbo line, you know, which if anybody knows that investigating, where were you on the evening that this happened, right? It is like it's these sorts of leading, trying to get somewhere, poking around in there to find, you know, an issue. That'll start to get people a little bit back up and a little nervous, right?
Yeah, they create defensiveness.
Defensiveness.
Hans had a question, and Arvin had a question. Do we have time, Dominic?
I'm fine. I know we're
cool.
at the hour, but I'm okay to go over. So.
Okay. So from Hans, can you give? So there's a smiley face behind this, so I'm not sure if it's a real question or not, Hans. Can you give too much space? I need to do something right.
Yeah.
Hans, do you want to unmute yourself and maybe hash that out just a little tiny bit for us?
Yes. Yeah. I've sort of figured out the power of just giving the space, but then somewhere I need to put in something into the conversation, and when I've been quiet for a long time, I feels like I have to. When I finally open my mouth, it should be something spectacular.
Something profound.
Right on. Yes. Well, and I can see with your smiley face, you already can tell that this is about figuring it out, right? Versus, you know, being in the middle of it. Like, okay, so there's a way to give space. There's a certain amount of space, but not too much space, right? Like, so that, and that of course will get in your own way, right? But when you just stick to principles, I'm sitting with another human being, fully capable, all the answers within, and I'm allowing space, and we're talking, and I'm curious, and I'm in Enlighten, I'm putting lights on in different parts of the room here, and we're seeing what we see. And now I'm not sure what's happened. We've talked, and I'm not really sure what's happened. I don't know where to go next. Right? So if you could just stay present, I'm like, well, you know, we're about 30 minutes in, we're about 45 minutes into our conversation. There's a lot we've talked about. Where should we go next? That's what occurs. Because you know what? Nothing occurs to me. So again, lucky for me, I'm sitting with someone capable, connected to infinite intelligence. I know for sure that who's in the best position of kind of knowing where to go next and what's now important, given all the enlightenment that's happened and everything they've seen, because I asked them what's important and I've asked them this and that, right? Who will know? Well, I'm noticing I don't have anywhere to go. So lucky they're here with me because I know that they'll know. So now so how do I give space? That's a way to, right? So I don't have to worry about myself and whether the space is enough or any of that, and just sort of co-create the session with them. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's a really good tip, because it doesn't feel right to say, yeah, I have nothing. So, you talked a lot, but yeah, no, doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
It sounds like ultimately it's about remembering to have faith in the person you're sitting with your coachee, or in your coachee.
I've had, as an example, like where the outcome was wanted to be about, I want to get more clarity about this decision because I'm really confused and blah, blah, and I need more clarity about this decision. Then we talk for a half an hour and, you know, they're into it and they're talking and whatever. And I get there and I'm like, oh my God, I am so confused. I was like, this was about clarity. And I'm like, I am so confused. This went off here and it went there and behind us and forward and right. And so then I'll do, well, you know, when we started this conversation, you were hoping for more clarity. So what is more clear to you? And then I sit back and I am just astonished by how smart people are, right? It's just amazing how people who are connected to mind and infinite intelligence, how smart they are, because they'll proceed to tell me what has become clear because I can't figure it out. I'm like so confused, right? And then they'll let me know the parts that they're clearer about, right? Well, I'm seeing I'm more clear about this and I'm more clear about that and I'm more clear about this other thing. And now I say, wow, that's like, there's a lot of pieces where you've had clarity. Where should we go now in this conversation? Where do you want to go next? And they just basically lead the whole conversation. This is what happens when you don't interfere. These really capable, intelligent people lead these conversations. And your whole skill and training as a coach is, would you just stop interfering? Stop interfering. And so mastery becomes you disappear. There's less and less and less of you in there. And more and more and more of the client shines in those conversations.
There was one question left from Arvin, and shoot, where did it go? I just had it. Suggestions. So the question is how to develop such a skill to be able to give space, listen to people. So what is it fair, Arvin, that the question is how do you get better at giving space, to paraphrase you?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to, because it seems like sometime I'm accidentally doing it, and other time I purposefully ask question that kind of stops people on track from what was happening. So I want to know, is there this skill set or there's a process that people can take on in order to get to the point where you are able to, regardless, you could give them the space and have the skills to listen to them properly, basically.
Yeah. Well, you're on track in many ways, because what I heard you say in all of that is that you have an awareness. So there's is that me? No. You have an awareness showing up, like you said, oh, I can see when I've done it, and then I can see when I stop them in their tracks or whatever. So this sort of sensitivity about what's space and what is interfering with, what is allowing an agenda, like what is allowing them and their energy to move, and when have I taken over and steered it somewhere, like, so that's all a knowing and a feeling, right? Mm-hmm. So just the distinction of space and that freedom in there to explore, as you have the distinction, like, which means you can see it, you will know what to do, but also you will know when you haven't, like when you've gotten in the way. I was a client just this morning, I was talking to him and he was saying, well, you know, what should I do and how would I do? And I said, so if you think like balance, like I want to be in balance, like with a bike, right? Well, mostly you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in balance. You're mostly about to fall over, right? Now, when you are no good
Mm-hmm.
riding the bike, you actually don't get it. You don't have sufficient awareness. So you're falling over and you don't even notice you are, and until you crash and scrape your arm on the ground, like you don't even get it, right? As you get better and better and better, you are so sensitive to what is balance and what is not balance that you can feel it going off, and then there's no instruction or whatever. You lean the other way and it goes back on. So here you are with your client, or maybe your girlfriend, or maybe a friend, and you are giving space, and all of a sudden you notice their tone changes. You detect defensiveness, or you detect like a pushing back, an arguing with you. See, when I'm coaching, by the way, this happens in coaching. I'm coaching, right? I'm coaching, and all of a sudden my client says something like, no, I don't think so. No, that isn't da 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 da. And I'm like, wait a minute. They're arguing, right? Hang on a second. How could this happen? That we're having a coaching conversation and the client is about to argue with me. And it's like, what did I do? Like something, like, because like, how could we be in an argument, right? They're now about to justify what they were doing, and and when you get the sensitivity to it, it also gets into, I have no intention of being in a coaching conversation to argue with my client, to push them to see what they're not seeing, right? So when I get that sensitivity, I back right off. I must have said something, and I did. I asserted something. I threw in some judgment here. I said something. I provided some opinion or something, which they are now having to clear up or to change. And so suddenly what I do is, well, my energy changes. I mean, I go into receiving and allowing. I go into a heightened listening, a basically shutting up and taking in everything and listening like crazy. And then the other thing that I notice doing is reflecting and affirming and acknowledging what I'm hearing. Totally. And now the energy goes back to spaciousness, right? But how do you do it? You're on track because you have attention and awareness. So you've got self-awareness, because you first have to have the distinction. Once you have the distinction, now you can sense, is it there? Is it not there? And then you'll know what to do, just like balance, because you'll see you've gotten off of it.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I've literally said, sometimes I've literally said, you know, and you know what? I'm sorry, where we've gone in this conversation, I think I've taken this conversation somewhere not useful. Let's just stop for a second. Let's just talk for a second. Let's just go back to, where do we want to go? And I get them back in the driver's seat to take us somewhere.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not interested in winning this debate or whatever the hell has happened that I didn't pick up early enough. And it's, you know, and now we're kind of far down into some weird place, right? So, but the minute I wake up to it, I kind of now realize, okay, now I want to go back.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Quarter after.
Yes. So
are we full for now, everyone? Dominic, what were you gonna say there?
No, let's just check. Is everybody anything more at this point?
Is there something else anyone would like to mention or share or ask? I'm pretty full myself. Even have notes.
Cool. Well, Michael, as sneaky as he is, when we started doing a Coaching 101, then he wrote Coaching 101 Part 1. I was not aware of that. So now we get the Part 2. And so to be fair, the part where we haven't touched on enough, which could be useful, are some models that when you are in that sort of open space area, is what are ways of looking at that in terms of where to take your curiosity. And Michael's posted some things that are really useful. They sound really complicated, you know, this dialogic quadrant or whatever, but there's some simple ideas around what is your conversation about? What are you asking questions about? And it is the idea of, are you paying attention to what problem, or is your question curious about a solution? Right away, you see some differences. Is your question about the future, or is your question about the past? Right? Like, so these types of things, what are you curious about? Is your question, is it about what's working? Is it about what's not working? Is it about what the person wants? Is it about what they don't want? And what are the implications of all of that, right? And what's more useful to get curious about, and maybe stuff you don't want to be as curious about because it actually doesn't help, right? So if we do a Part 3, we can immerse. We can immerse.
You heard it from the horse's mouth, folks. All right, let's wrap this one up. I know that Dominic has a call in 45 minutes. Wonderful to see you all. Thank you, everybody. If you want to unmute yourselves and do a collective goodbye, that'd be great. And I'll keep you posted as to Part 3. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Love you. I'll have this posted soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.